We are delighted to have you, even though we speakers may be outnumbering the people listening. We will do our utmost as if this room were filled. You wanted to, yes, okay, sorry.
Fabulous. And I'm just going to jump behind you all because our fancy camera is up on the wall. Okay. Hi, everyone here at the library, and hello, friends watching on a live stream from the comforts of your home. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Priya, and I'm the head of Adult Services here at Forbes Library. If you have any questions or would like to discuss programming like this in the future, please come find me afterward. Awesome. Hear a little bit of feedback. I think that's my problem. Sorry about that. If you need a restroom while you're here, I do hear that. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to grab our wireless mic if that's okay with you all. And I will bring it right back, I promise. Okay. We'll jump back. If you need a restroom or water fountain while you're here, you can do so. Find that in the Arts and Music Department, which is just across the hallway and to the left. If you need an exit or an elevator, that is just through the art gallery and to the right, probably the way you came up. Since you're here in the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Library and Museum, if you would like to explore this space anymore, get a sense of the artifacts and items in our space, please feel free to come back during open hours tomorrow or next week. Okay, so we are here for Poetry in Times of Crisis, which is our first poetry event for National Poetry Month. And so we're very grateful to our panelists today for coming to share their thoughts and read their works. We're going to have 4 poets who you see in front of you exploring through their poetry current and past events that have preoccupied us, including the war in the Middle East, antisemitism and other forms of racism, the COVID epidemic, homophobia, global warming, and gun control. And the panelists are all widely published poets. So I'm going to read a very brief bio for each one, and I will let you all get to it, what you came here to hear. Okay, so we will start with Lesléa Newman, has created 87 books for readers of all ages, including memoirs in verse, I Carry My Mother and I Wish My Father, the novel in verse, October Morning, a song for Matthew Shepard, the poetry collection Lovely, and the children's books Sparkle Boy, Heather Has Two Mommies, Welcoming Elijah, A Passover Tale with a Tale, and Joyful Song, A Naming Story. Her literary awards include a poetry fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Massachusetts Artists Foundation, 2 Jewish Book Awards, 2 American Library Association Stonewall Honors, the Association for Jewish Libraries Sidney Taylor Body of Work Award, and the Mass Book Award. She is a past poet laureate of Northampton, Mass. We also have Owen Lewis, who is the author of 4 collections of poetry and 3 chapbooks, most recently Knock Knock. Field Light was a distinguished favorite, 2020 NYC Big Book Award, and a 2021 Must Read, Mass Book Awards. And Best Man was the recipient of the Jean Pedrick Chapbook Prize of the New England Poetry Club. He's also the recipient of the International Hippocrates Prize for Poetry and Medicine at Columbia University. He is professor of psychiatry in the Department of Medical Humanities and Ethics and teaches narrative medicine. We also have Jayne Benjulian, directly in front of me. Jayne's poems and essays appear widely in journals and anthologies. David Wojan described her poetry collection 5 Sextillion Atoms as, quote, a highly distinctive and gripping book, notable for the ways in which it combines the stories of family history with larger matters of public history. She was a teaching fellow at Emory University and a Fulbright scholar in Lyon, France, and she mentored poets and prose writers at the University of San Francisco and San Francisco State. She served as director of new play development at Magic Theater in San Francisco and chief speechwriter at Apple. In the Berkshires, she continues to mentor writers and guide their books from concept to publication. And April 5th is her 12-year anniversary in West Stockbridge. I love that. And lastly, we have Richard Michelson. Richard's books have been listed among the 10 best of the year by the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and the New Yorker. He's received a National Jewish Book Award, plus twice finalist, 2 gold medals from the Association of Jewish Libraries, and 2 Mass Cultural Council fellowships. He has quite a few collections, and his work was chosen to represent the Commonwealth at the 2018 Library of Congress National Book Festival. In 2019, he became the 6th recipient of the Samuel Minot Jones Award, for Lifetime Literary Achievement. Originally from Brooklyn, Michelson now lives in Western Mass, and he served 2 terms as Poet Laureate of Northampton, where he owns R. Michelson Galleries and hosts Northampton Poetry Radio. It's a lot of accolades for the folks at the tables in front of me here. So with that, I will return this microphone and we can get started. Thank you.
Yeah, just for a second. So I just want to say a word about our panel, and we'll be going in order. These are really fraught times that we're in and have been fraught times last year, the year before. So as we were putting the panel together, the idea of poetry in times of crisis, how do poets respond to crisis? How do poets assimilate crisis? I thought of the quote from Carlos Williams from Asphodel. It's very difficult to get news from poems, but men die miserably every day trying to get what's found there. So it's not exactly news, but it's reflection on news. It's thinking about what's happened to us and placing us at different points in time. So with that, Lesléa.
Thank you for being here, both in the library and at home. When I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking of the Chinese word for crisis is 2 characters. One is danger and the other is opportunity. So that has always stuck with me. And I also thought we could call this, at least my section, maybe for you all too, Poems I Wish I Never Had to Write. That's kind of what I have in front of me. So actually, in my 15 minutes, I'm going to do a 2-part reading. The first is from my book, October Morning, A Song for Matthew Shepard. And to refresh your memory or give you new information if you don't know, Matthew Shepard in 1998 was a gay college student at the University of Wyoming who was kidnapped from a bar and beaten terribly and tied to a fence and left abandoned. And he died he was discovered 18 hours later, and he died 6 days later. And I was there as the keynote speaker for the school's Gay Awareness Week. So this is an event that touched me very deeply, so I wrote a book about it, which is what I feel like poets do in times of crisis, is we write in order, hopefully, to understand. So the fence that Matt was tied to became an iconic symbol of this hate crime. And so I'm going to read 4 poems from the point of view of the fence, personified, and then one last poem, and then I'll move on to something else. The fence before. Out and alone on the endless empty prairie, the moon bathes me, the stars bless me, the sun warms me, the wind soothes me. Still, 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 I wonder, will I always be out here exposed and alone? Will I ever know why I was put on this earth? Will somebody someday stumble upon me? Will anyone remember me after I'm gone? The fence that night. I held him all night long. He was heavy as a broken heart. Tears fell from his unblinking eyes. He was dead weight, yet he kept breathing. He was heavy as a broken heart. His own heart wouldn't stop beating. He was dead weight, yet he kept breathing. His face streaked with moonlight and blood. His own heart wouldn't stop beating. The cold wind wouldn't stop blowing. His face streaked with moonlight and blood. I tightened my grip and held on. The cold wind wouldn't stop blowing. We were out on the prairie alone. I tightened my grip and held on. I saw what was done to this child. We were out on the prairie alone. Their truck was the last thing he saw. I saw what was done to this child. I cradled him just like a mother. Their truck was the last thing he saw. Tears fell from his unblinking eyes. I cradled him just like a mother. I held him all night long. The fence 1 week later. I keep still, I stand firm, I hold my ground while they lay down, flowers and photos, prayers and poems, crystals and candles, sticks and stones. They come in herds, they stand and stare, they sit and sigh, they crouch and cry. Some of them touch me in unexpected ways without asking permission and then move on. But I don't mind. Being a shrine is better than being the scene of a crime. And the fence after, and the fence was torn down. Preyed upon, frowned upon, revered, feared, adored, abhorred, despised, idolized, splintered, scarred, weathered, worn, broken down, broken up, ripped apart, ripped away, gone, but not forgotten.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to be reading from my new book, which actually is coming out next week, A Prayer of Six Wings. And like Lesléa's poem, it begins October 7th. It's meant to be read as a continuous story of the year, my year after October 7th, with very close family, a daughter, 2 grandchildren, now a 3rd grandchild in Israel, but also in New York, watching the antisemitism, watching the posters of the hostages every day ripped down, every day put back, every day. And, you know, I describe, well, I will describe that in a poem too. So I'm going to read a few of these, and the first is going to begin October 7th from A Prayer of Six Wings. My partisan grief, supernova, October 7th, 2023. These are my cousins. I don't know them. These, my sons, daughters, young lovers, and friends. I don't know them. Their music fills the desert sky. They dance to wed the Negev night. Before dawn, the stars have fled. Those watchful stars, like angel eyes, who silenced you, angels? You've lost your song. The light is old and bitter, breaks the dark. These sudden sparks start at a rifle's mouth, mouth to mouth, silenced. What unsilenced rage wrangles through ranging hearts? Not glinted stars, these quicker knives, quickening life exits. What music now, here, in the vast and moving desert, these vast and unmoving rocks, this vast and unforgiving grief. My cousins, my sons, my daughters. The next poem is in 2 parts. If you remember the first TV images of a young woman named Noah Argamani in her 20s being thrown onto that motorcycle and scooted away. And this poem is called At Home Coliseum, New York. The TV's looping on a 26-year-old woman I'll begin this again. At Home Coliseum, New York. The TV's looping on a 26-year-old woman named Noah as she's thrown onto a motorbike straddle. She reaches into my living room. I almost take her hand again and again. Our fingers almost touch just beyond the glass. Like that 1 second when God Supreme on the Sistine Chapel ceiling touches Adam's fingers to give him pulse. No jolting there, no spasm, no cry out, no outcry. The first man gets breath and soul. Or perhaps it was the moment just before. They're both so calm, expectant, the everlasting moment after moment, and now, generations later, Noah is hostage to all the memories buried in the catacombs of civilization beneath the many coliseums, inside the TV set, in my living room. In my living room, Noah, almost 4, is looking under the couch for the lion. She's my granddaughter and shapes my fingers into a cage, enclosing the lion. She passes her hand over its head like a blessing, declares it asleep, safe for me to open the cage. TV off, we play in front of its dark stare, sitting on a couch that sits on a rug on a floor over a basement, and below that, labyrinths of somewhere catacombs, tunnels where the dead and the living plot. We play finger games, cat and mouse, pigs going to some market or churches and steeples, and open the doors to all the praying people, so many languages. We must be in the midst of Babel's ruin. No one hears the other's prayer. I hold up my index finger to ask for a moment of silence. Noah takes a quick breath, looks at me, expecting an explanation. I'm thinking, in Hebrew, the index is the teacher. Words failing, my Noah, this Noah, rests her head on my lap, the lion on hers. I wait for the lesson of these days, or more than a lesson, for all days, all generations, if there are to be generations for all. And my daughter and her family were briefly back, but returned quickly back to Tel Aviv. She's a musician, and this is about her return, a belief in order. My daughter returns to bring music to a stunned country, her orchestra straining in every note, still echoing halls once overfilled, once Beethoven's timpanied fifth. I wanted to tell her, be safe, stay in New York. She knew all I didn't say. If I hear missiles, she stays in their midst to rally the percussions, the clear voices of a congregation of horns, flutes luring frightened hoopoes back to the singing banyans, dreaming doves to the date palms, the strings full timbre seeking the autumn garden's blue muscari, the field-scented white saffron crocus. Their necessary music that heals, even as it anticipates the wounds. And the name Noah keeps seeming to reappear. This poem called Hamas releases a video, reported New York Times, November 14th, 2023, claiming Noah Marciano is killed by her own country's bombardment. She pleaded by video with her country, this 19-year-old colonel, how young is she? Once on lookout, the guard tower, Kibbutz Nahal Oz. In the next sequence, a body covered by a sheet-pocked red, a rash of bloody bullet holes. Now she's a plagued body thrown to a fire, bodies dead and bodies embering. The noon sun wanes, refusing its own light, heaven eclipsing, a river of blood lava, houses like hills, buildings like mountains explode, outpourings on the streets. This magma flows and magnums clot. This woman called Noah, this and another, and how many Noahs will be left? She bleeds into the sheet, a generation's miscarriage. And there are different time frames in the book. This poem is called Remembering the Doves of Ma'agan, which is a kibbutz on the Kinneret, 1973 and 2024. A wing stretch, a single beat, the tips of Star Point vanish. They brush off sleep like a kiss. Their soft, lofting coos usher them down from nests in the date palms to the banks of the ancient Kinneret. It's morning. They gather to watch the lake mist dancers present and dancers past. What traces of grace left to these waters? The doves drink slow draughts, preen feather by feather, bird by bird, and all are counted by stories in the many languages ever spoken here, syllable by syllable, word by word. Each dawn is drawn in the history of water on the lips of the shore, the lips of the men who've claimed to own these shores. These, once birds of peace, are the ones who carry its memory. It's called Sabbath in Kirjanov, 1901. Kirjanov being a town in Belarus that my grandfather's family came from. New York was a rumor, but we knew how to dream of Jerusalem. For centuries, we sang of next year. Desert winds rolled each time the Torah unscrolled, rolled in the rafters of the synagogue roof. From huddled corners on Shabbat, we walked into Zion and home again, our baskets full, wheat and barley, our staples, and sometimes autumnal grapes, sometimes figs and olives and dates, but nothing in our imagination sweeter than the pomegranate. O Zion, not even Tsar Nicholas had seen one or sipped its stain of young wine. O Zion, my harvest, my herds, a pomegranate of 1,000 seeds, my people on the wings of 1,000 songs. And I'm going to conclude with a poem entitled 2,000-Pound Bombs Drop, reported New York Times, December 22nd, 2023. In Khan Yunis, the call to prayer is the call of a dazed Palestinian child crying, Baba, standing at the brim of a cavernous pit of rubble, biting his knuckles, Baba, Baba. It's so close to the Abba of the dazed Israeli children of Be'eri, Kfar Aza. There is no comfort, From his uncles, he's heard the calls for revenge, for his home in school, for his bed of nighttime stories, for his Nana's whisper song of God's many names. His Allah, his neighbor's Adonai, cry the same tears for death and shun more blood. No miracle these waters turning red. Who called forth the fleets of avenging angels? By viral post, Jewish plagues on Gaza, a firstborn lost, then a second, a third. What other plagues pass over? Hail from the tepid sky. From on high it falls and keeps falling. Though we've seen terrible things, you will tell us, Adonai, Allah, tell us, do you remember the forgotten promise? From the pile once home of rubble stone, a father's hand reaching out, Baba, Abba, crushed by the load. We know the silence of the lost child. God has injured us, but we will bind up our wounds. Mothers look for us, called by the name Yama, calling the name Imma, our Father of mercy, not the God of sacrifice. Our many crying heads explode. Thank you.
That's great. I thought a lot about crisis and trauma recently, as have you all, I'm sure. And it is my bent, and I think my poetic habit, to think about personal and civic trauma like rivers, like currents that flow against each other, into each other, and away from each other, so that you can't distinguish the water from the stream, from the swamp, from the sea, from the mountains, once it hits the river. And I think my work, my habit of work is like that too, so that the facts of my European-centric Americanness, Jewness, womanness, niece-ness, daughterness, motherness are inextricably twinned. I understood in 2016 and again last year that I am a dissident now, but lest I feel sorry for myself, I have some extraordinary models for dissidents, mostly from that part of the world I'm most familiar with, Tsvetaeva, Akhmatova, Zimborska. I wanted to buy a gun. The previous owner of our house left us a gun safe. But when my temper flares, I break things, so no. I wanted to adopt a German Shepherd, but the vet, the food, the trainer, the SUV to house the giant crate, so no. What can a poet do? Record, truth tell, by that I mean inner truth. Not so much strive for balance or presenting both sides, no. Nonfiction prose is a much better vehicle for balance. Poetry reports, emanates, illuminates, explodes from the inside. It is not balanced. And I think a poet can experience a life, a personal, intimate life, and a civic life that inform each other, sometimes without naming, sometimes leaving silences in which the audience can hear oceans roaring. I installed an alarm system, and once I pressed the panic button, and no one came. Rural cops. In my village near Odessa, near Oz, no one came. Poetry is my alarm. I'll read about 6 or 7 short poems. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lesléa, Owen, and Jayne. Wonderful to hear your work and to read with you. Thank you to Forbes Library. Thank you to the people in this room and those who are watching. Poetry in times of crisis. So, what are we living through now? War, antisemitism, racism, homophobia, COVID, global warming, and gun control. I could have chosen any of my poems. You know, they all fit in there one way or another, so you're in for a fun time today. But I tried to choose a few that maybe combine a few things. Gun control has been very important throughout my life. My father was a victim of gun violence. I have spent my life working towards gun control, and it is something I am sorely losing in this world, but all we can do is keep going one way after another. This is called Neighborhood Villanelle, and to those who don't know what a villanelle is, you probably have heard of Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." You'll get a sense, lines repeat, etc. In this neighborhood, you'd better learn to fight, my father says. Real schooling's from hard knocks. Books won't save your life. He knows I'd rather write and read. I don't talk back. His love is no birthright. Instead, I bluff, act tough. He teaches me to box. In this neighborhood, you'd better learn to you'd better learn to fight, he says, or you'll be prey. Better tough Israelite than studious black hat, defenseless orthodox. Books won't save your life. I know you'd rather write. Next day was Hanukkah, the festival of lights. Hey, Jew boy, some kids jeered as if I wore earlocks. I was no Maccabee, bluff called. I could not fight. I came to, battered, bruised, but had no appetite for bloodshed or revenge. Instead, I walked for blocks, prayed books would save my life. I swore someday I'd write these lines, and now I have. We never kissed goodnight, yet every poem I wrote, he saved. The paradox? A bullet stopped his life. Lead plug he could not fight. I escaped the neighborhood with every word I write. So, I wasn't going to read this next poem, but I decided to move it up after Jayne's poem about Mother Russia. Years ago, I was fortunate to be invited to read on a tour through Russia. And I went with a friend of mine who was a black poet. And this poem, this was when Russia was our friend, before they weren't our friend, before they are our friend, who knows. This is called Dead Negro. After one of our readings, we went to a bar. My wife was actually with us, and she noticed on the menu there was a drink called the Dead Negro. Nothing is where I left it. The empty, littered lot next to my father's hardware store has turned up 2 blocks to the north. Even the store itself, which sold its last hammer and nail to the contractor who tore it down, putting the substandard duplex in its place, is missing. And the neighbors' children are now the neighbors, and the chalk outline of my father is rained from the gutter where he settled down with the bullet that killed him. Somewhere else, the murderer is murdering somebody else. But everything is the same in this poem where the poet misplaces his keys. My old Jewish neighborhood is filled with blacks, and the African American neighborhoods are busy with Asians, and the Mexicans are everywhere. But here, in this dark bistro, in the Soviet-era city of Pskov, 6 hours south of St. Petersburg, there is a dead Negro on the bar menu. The dead Jews, my father among them, rise up in protest like the benevolent protectors they once were. They are looking for the picket line, which is no longer where they left it. And the leftists have moved to the right, and God is looking for God everywhere. Nothing is where I left it. Not my hammer and sickle, not my Star of David, not my well-thumbed book of poems. My wife and children are nowhere to be found. Oh, Amachai, can you help me to find my keys in the pockets of the Palestinian boy moved into my Brooklyn home? His sister is missing, and his mother is not where he left her. It's enough to start anyone drinking. I'll have a dead Negro, somebody says from the next booth. A black man, maybe the one that killed my father. But in this light, I can't tell. Don't we all look exactly the same? So when we talk about poems in a time of crisis, we also have to talk about those who create crisis. This is a sestina. Again, for those who are unaware, 6 stanzas, 6 lines each, end lines repeat in a different pattern within each stanza. I will start out by saying, because people generally ask me after I read this poem, every fact in it is true. The poem is called Vermin. I wrote this poem well before our current president used that term to define, well, you all know that. Vermin. It was essential, Einstein stated, that he bring his violin to Berta Fanta's salon on Prague's Old Town Square. It is 1912, 4 years until relativity, and 6 before the first wave of the Spanish flu will kill among the 500 million infected the painter Egon Schiele, already despondent over the death 3 days earlier of his lover, Edith, and their unborn child. Painting his pregnant lover the day before her death, he could already hear the viola and mournful bassoon of Mozart's Requiem Mass. Ready now to sketch himself dying, he gazes into the small square of his shaving mirror and recalls how he first entered the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts at age 16, even before his initial shave, no younger student accepted before or since. He died never to know he'd won that spot over the 17-year-old Adolf Hitler, who'd later loathed degenerate art and physicist Jews, moving to Berlin to pursue politics, aborting both brush and pen. The square root of time, displacing millennia of atoms, is already music, usurping Einstein's brain, as nodding to Max Brod, he readies his violin under his chin. The pianist, who already has 4 of his 83 books penned to literary acclaim, looks squarely into the eyes of his closest friend, Franz Kafka. Brod loves his quiet companion's unpublished scribblings, which violate all of fiction's conventions. He had offered Franz absinthe for courage before inviting him to Berta's if he'd recite the story about a transformation into vermin. Yet, rising to read to his fellow Jews, even Kafka cannot conceive of violence so extreme that each present will be dubbed a cockroach. For now, though, let's leave these imaginative culture lovers in paradise. And in the Kafkian absurdity of E equals MC squared, we can time travel to British Columbia, where we'll reappear squarely inside a brothel owned by Bavarian-born Friedrich Trump. Theoretically viable, we can locate the villain who, full of self-love, emigrated at 16 to avoid the military draft. He has already planned a move to Queens, where he'll die 5 months before Sheila of the same deadly flu. his atoms still infecting us via his grandson's love of Hitlerian speech. Even Kafka cannot square anti-alien taunts with Melania's Einstein visa violation. I pray thee, Lord, a fevered Mozart pleads, forgive us, forget us. We are done for. Okay, I'm going to move to COVID to lighten things up. This is called Bless You. It has an epigraph. Since sneezing was the first sign of falling ill with the plague, Pope Gregory ordered prayer for divine intervention. And that is, in fact, why we say, bless you, after somebody sneezes because of the Black Plague. Gesundheit, Great Aunt Frida calls out, each sneeze another occasion for my soul to abandon my body. I hurry my index finger under my nose horizontally, blocking both nostrils as tutored so evil can't seize and inhale to fill the void. Denying the devil his due, Frida dubs it, she who at 60 to my 6 reflexively worries her brow, reaches toward a box of Kleenex and spits over her shoulder. I mimic, patoo, patoo, patoo. Tonight, 8 years older than she was at her death, and dining curbside to curtail the coronavirus, I hear 2 tables over, chew. And for the first time in years, measure the distance between superstition and truth. Around me, panic, as mid-forkful, everyone freezes. May God keep us upwind from all airborne diseases. And I'm just going to end with 2 very short poems because we are in a time of crisis, but we're also approaching the Passover holiday. And I think the Passover holiday gives us a sense of history. We're not alone in a time of crisis. People have been through hard times before us. Hopefully they'll be through hard times after us. In my last book, Sleeping as Fast as I Can, I rewrote the Haggadah because I've got chutzpah. And I created a prayer for each step of the Haggadah. I'm just going to read 2 short ones. Let's see. What should I read? It says, prayer before the slaying of the firstborn. And if we, who are your replacements, refuse to praise the slaughter, and if refusing, we forget to bloody our doorposts, and if forgetting, we turn our backs to the window and never see God's curtain of merciful light slowly lowered like a plague of darkness before us. Tonight, let my thoughts swarm like locusts devouring reason. Let my heart be an army of leaping frogs. And I'll end with this Passover prayer with house pets. Belief is the cat scratching at the back screen door, wanting in, wanting out, sipping from the goblet of wine we left for Elijah too near the water bowl. Faith is the stray dog rescued, his slobbering tongue both trial and proof. Each day he waits dutifully, confident of our return. Trust is the parakeet kept caged and covered inside our faintly beating hearts. O turtle of slow devotion, gerbil of circular reasoning, let patience be our exercise wheel, and this prayer the bathwater, steadily rising until even the goldfish of our misgivings swim past window sash and doorpost, the house overflowing with chaos, with awe. Thank you very much. Owen, take it from here.
So we'd like to hear from you any questions about what you heard for any of us.
Please raise your hands and I'll bring you the microphone. And I can start with one if folks want to think about it. I'm curious if the four of you have, aside from each other poets who you read and admire and follow who you are influenced by in times of crisis, who have given you hope and reflection and perspective. And it's okay to name each other. I feel like this, that kind of comes with the territory.
Well, I mean, I turn all the time and every time to Yehuda Amachai. He's my guiding light, and I think one of the greatest poets he is one of the greatest poets of all time. And for locally and contemporary, my dear friend Martina Spada, who lives in this area and has a new book out, and is actually having his first reading tomorrow, which we'll miss because we're reading in Stockbridge. Martina and I grew up a few blocks from each other in East New York, Brooklyn, and I think he is a poet who I turn to as a lesson and as a hope.
There's a wonderful Substack that has a poem a day. It's called, sponsored by Indolent Books, Indolent, and they have a series of poems called Second Coming, and every day they post a poem written in protest of the demise or attack on our democracy. And I've gotten a lot of inspiration from those poems.
I guess not surprisingly, my go-to poet is Yehuda Amichai also.
That's what you get when you have a panel with four Jews.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And the dissident poets of Eastern Europe I mentioned before, who lived through far worse than I have lived through so far.
Thank you.
I have to leave, so I'm going to just appreciate that I took the time and got here. First, I thought it was at the JCA, then I thought it was at your store, and then I got here. So I apologize for coming in late. But I think, the act of writing, for all of you, as you've expressed it, has been not just cathartic, but far more in what I heard in the poems. And I wanted to just say that listening has had that, and I think it is, for me, it's some of the particular subjects that you chose, but it is literally the spending time with words to find that careful expression of these ideas and the metaphors. I will walk away really full of the metaphors that you've laid out. The pineapple is never going to be the same. I'm just going to say that particularly. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Can you spell the poet's name that you all turned to?
Amichai. That's his last name. Yehuda, Yehuda.
Yeah.
H. Yeah. Amichai.
If you Google Israeli poet, he'll be great.
And he's widely translated.
I guess my go-to poets is Avram Sutzkever, who originally wrote in Yiddish, has some wonderful translations, was a partisan fighter in Poland, wound up in Israel. But again, similar to what you're saying, I mean, the times he lived through and managed to write and managed to find beautiful images and keep going.
First, thank you for being here. It was super beautiful. Appreciate it. I just wonder, does poetry ever escape you? And what do you do when it does? Is it ungraspable for you in these times?
Meaning
You just writing it and writing it. Does it seem just so far away?
Well, for me, I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, but I think all poets at one time or another, if not often, have to plod through the mediocre, what they consider mediocre. I remember Louise Glick, a wonderful poet, said her father wanted to be a writer, but he couldn't bear looking at the mediocre work he had written. He just couldn't bear it. And I think we all have to just plod through the murk and the unsatisfactory to get to the moment we leap.
Many poets will talk about kind of almost being visited. That something, I wouldn't say mystical, but that it just kind of ideas find them. And is it harder to be found during times of crisis, I guess?
Oh, interesting. I would say no. It's harder to kind of stay alive in the general sense, but I don't think so. What do you all think?
Well, for me, that trope of being inspired is just not so. I think of myself primarily as a craftsman. I'm trying to put words together, make the best poem I can. People often say to me, how can you, if during dark poems, how can you, it must be so depressing to be writing and being in that headset, where in fact the only time I'm not depressed is when I'm writing, because I'm taking the outside world and in a sense I'm creating a puzzle and trying to work through. And so when I'm writing about things like a murder or COVID or a war, etc., I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about putting this word and that word and what does that work and not work. So in a sense, that's what keeps me writing. It's almost like keeps the world out, even though that's what I'm writing. So I find that it's not there. No inspiration is involved. It just is sitting in front of a piece of paper, and you stop. You want to clean the room, and you want to do this and do that, and you just have to be there and write. At least that's for me. I've never been visited from on high.
I think there's more inspiration and impetus in times of turmoil than actually in times of complacency. And not that I have a sense of well-being that lasts all that long ever, but and inspiration for me can be just a bit of a phrase or a phrase. I mean, occasionally you get a poem that just sort of writes itself, but much more often it's just the starting point of something, and then words that come next. And as Rich says, sitting and crafting it or letting it out, really, finding the words to allow it to be. But it's both sometimes received and sometimes just plotted and worked on.
So in times of crisis or trauma, I turn to reading poetry a lot, and that will inspire me to write more poetry. So that's what I do when I'm stuck. I just go to read poetry. And it's true, like listening to all of your poems, I had 6 ideas, which I hope I remember. So, I'm listening to the poems, and it's, something is firing in my head. So that's what poetry begets more poetry.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate it. Thanks for
very
saying
much for being here.
Thank you.